Hello friends, it's Kristie Marcotte. In today's video, I'll be using Scrapbook.com's Joyful Ride stamp set and also the coordinating Joyful Ride shape dies. Here's a quick look at the two sets. I love the fun images, and there are two sentiments. You have joy with the snowflake in the center and a really fun wavy sentiment. May this Christmas be more than just a season, but a way of life. For pattern paper, I'll be using Scrapbook.com's Peppermint collection. This is one of my favorite Christmas collections. The colors and designs are so much fun. For card design number 1, I've already gone ahead and cut out all of the pieces. The light green pattern paper with the foliage is 2.5 inches by 3 3/4 of an inch. And I'll be layering it on a piece of vellum. I cut that vellum 1/4 of an inch larger. I'll put adhesive on the back, making sure only to add adhesive behind the pattern paper. I don't want it showing through on the vellum. Then I'll layer that piece on some green cardstock. And the green cardstock is from the Cools Smooth Cardstock collection. I cut the smaller green cardstock piece 3/8 of an inch larger than the vellum layer. So the size of that green piece is 3 1/8 of an inch by 4 3/8 of an inch. I'll put adhesive on the back and add this panel onto the tree pattern paper. The adhesive I'm using is Scrapbook.com's Deluxe Adhesive Roller. The background panel is 4 inches by 5 1/4 inches. I'll put adhesive on the back and adhere it onto an A2 size green cardstock layer. Next, I'll put my card front onto a card base. I'm using Neenah 110-pound cardstock. It's a nice sturdy cardstock. Now I'll set the card aside and start working on the sentiment. I'm using my Mini Misty to do the stamping. Make sure I get a good solid impression. I'll start off by stamping the two hanging ornaments. The ink color is Mardi Gras by Catherine Pooler. After I stamp those, I'll use the coordinating dies and cut them out. To hold the dies in place, I'm using Scrapbook.com's Mint Tacky Tape. The tape has just the right amount of tackiness, so it doesn't rip your paper, but it still holds the dies in place. It's also great for masking. I'm not sure what I would do without a roll of mint tape. I always have at least a few on hand. So here they are cut out, and I will be setting those aside for now. Still need to work on the sentiment. On this card, I'll be adding the sentiment Joy. And I love this sentiment with the solid O and the snowflake in the center. I used the same ink color, Mardi Gras by Catherine Pooler, and I did ink up the stamp twice to get a good solid impression. Now I'll cut it out using the coordinating die. I'll be adding the sentiment onto the foliage pattern paper, and off screen I've already stamped and cut out 2 more of the words Joy. Now I'll adhere all 3 of the sentiments to the card, trying to make sure to get them evenly placed. The glue I'm using is Scrapbook.com's new Artiste Craft Glue. I love this glue, and I'm using the fine tip. It also includes an ultra fine tip, so you do have different options. I first place the 3 joys onto the card to get the placement set. Then I'll glue down the top joy and work my way toward the bottom. You may notice that the bottom 2 joys are a lighter green color than the top joy. And that's only because I stamped the bottom 2 earlier on. When Catherine Pooler's ink dries completely, it does lighten just slightly. After adhering the sentiments, I'll add the 2 hanging ornaments in the upper left-hand corner. I'll first add the star and then the smaller ornament. To adhere the 2 ornaments, I'm using Artiste glue. There is a little bit of wiggle room when using adhesive glue, so if you need to adjust a piece, you do still have time. But once it dries, it's not going anywhere. For a little bit of sparkle on the ornaments, I'm using the clear glitter brush, putting it inside the ornament and the star. And for a final finishing touch, I'll add a small drop of pops of color to the center of the snowflakes inside the word Joy. I'm using the glitter snowflake color. I am tapping my card lightly to flatten those drops just a little bit. So there is my finished card, and I did end up making a total of 4. It's all the same card design, 2 in green and 2 using some red and pink pattern paper. The ink color I used is Catherine Pooler's Polished, and in the center of the 2 ornaments, I used the pink glitter brush marker from Scrapbook.com. I love making multiples of the same card, and it's always fun to change it up by using different ink colors and pattern paper. I do have a second card design to share with you. I really wanted to use the fun layered tree stamp. I first stamped out the solid tree image using Catherine Pooler's pink champagne ink color. Then I'll remove that stamp and add the tree layer. I'll first make sure I get the correct placement for the tree layer. It does help to use a MISTI. That way if you're making multiples, it's easy to stamp them again and again. And if you have more than one MISTI, you could stamp multiples quickly without having to readjust that tree layer. The ink color I use for the tree layer is Catherine Pooler's Sparkling Berry. After I've stamped out the tree, I'll use the coordinating die to cut it out. And off screen, I've already stamped and cut out 2 more pink trees. I've also stamped and cut out 3 tree trunks. I used Catherine Pooler's Icing on the Cake ink color. Now it's time to attach the trunk to the tree. I'll put just a little bit of artiste glue at the end of the trunk. Then I'll place the tree on top. And you'll see just a peek of the trunk. And actually when I'm finished, one of the trees you won't see the trunk at all. So I probably could have skipped that step. I'll set the trees aside for now and start assembling the card. I'll be using this fun pink pattern paper for the background. And I also have a panel of brushed white cardstock by Spellbinders. I'll be embossing the cardstock piece using Spellbinders' 3D embossing folder called Flurry of Snowflakes. I used to struggle to get the perfect sandwich when using a 3D embossing folder until Spellbinders came out with their universal plate system. The black Platinum 6 die cut machine that's exclusive to Scrapbook.com includes the universal plate system, and it really is a game changer. The sandwich for a 3D embossing folder is first A, which is the platform base. Then you have your embossing folder with your piece of cardstock or pattern paper. And on top, you'll add plate D, which is the adapter plate. And here's a look at the beautiful finished embossed piece. And you can use the embossed or the debossed side. They both have a beautiful look. I'll be using the embossed side. The white cardstock piece is 5 1/8 of an inch by 3 7/8 of an inch. Wanted to make sure you could still see some of the pink floral pattern paper. To adhere the embossed panel, I used both the adhesive roller and also artiste glue. I want to make sure to use enough adhesive so that embossed panel doesn't come off. Then I'll put adhesive on the back and add my card front onto a card base. I'll be creating a fun snowy hill at the bottom of the card, and I couldn't resist adding a little bit of sparkle. The glitter paper is from Lawn Fawn. It's their Pixie Dust color. I cut about a 1-inch strip. I've already stamped and cut out the wavy sentiment. May this Christmas be more than just a season, but a way of life. And I'll be adhering this sentiment on top of the glittery piece. But I want the glittery hill to follow the same wavy pattern as the sentiment. I simply held the sentiment on top of that glittery panel, then used my scissors to follow that same wavy pattern. Before adhering the glitter piece to the bottom of the card, I'm using a bone folder to flatten the embossed area. Then I'll put glue on the back and adhere my glittery hillside to the bottom of my card. I was ready to adhere the sentiment, but first I need to add the 3 pink trees. I'll first put the tree on the very right, and I am tucking the bottom of the trunk underneath the glittery hill. Then I'll add the tree on the very left, and here you can see I completely covered up the tree trunk, so I could have left that piece off. I did use a pair of scissors to trim off the very bottom of the trunk. That way it's easier to tuck underneath the glittery hill. And finally, I'll add the tree in the center. And I'm placing the trees at different heights for a little extra interest. You could pop up the trees with some foam dimension, but I decided to keep the card mostly flat. There's a lot of detail with the embossed background, the beautiful trees, and the sparkly hillside. Next, I'll add the sentiment, and I'll adhere that in place using glue. Making sure to put a good amount of glue since I am attaching it onto a glittery surface. I'm pressing the sentiment down firmly, and it will take just a few minutes for that glue to fully adhere, especially on a glittery surface. For a final finishing touch, I decided to add one of the adorable pink bunnies from the back side of the pink floral pattern paper. I used a pair of scissors to fussy cut out one of the little bunnies. I will be popping it up with some foam dimension using the thin foam strips from Scrapbook.com. I'm putting foam behind the body and the scarf and just a little bit of glue behind the bunny's head. Then I'll adhere it on the right side of the sentiment. And there is my finished card. I love the pink bunny and pretty pink trees. I did end up making a total of 4, 2 in pink and 2 in green. The ink color I used for the green trees is Matcha and Mardi Gras by Catherine Pooler. Now here's another look at the 8 cards I made using Scrapbook.com's Joyful Ride stamp set and also the Joyful Ride coordinating shape dies. I love making multiples of the same card, and the Joyful Ride stamp set made it super easy. If you are interested in any of the products I used in this video, there are links provided in the description box below. It may be July, but it's never too early to get started on your Christmas cards. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.